Civil rights groups say Houston City Council has caved to gubernatorial threats over cooperation with ICE. That story and more today on the Texas Standard.
Texas Standard is a production of KUT Austin, KERA North Texas, Houston Public Media, and Texas Public Radio in San Antonio.
I'm David Brown. More on Houston's decision to amend an ordinance limiting local law enforcement cooperation with federal immigration agents. Also, the latest frontier in the politics of energy, Andy Uhler on rising electricity demand statewide and the challenge convincing some rural Texans to get on board. Austin archery students take aim at a national competition. We'll hear about the real target of this undertaking. And will the owner of a huge statue in downtown Galveston please come forward? Those stories and then some as the Standard gets underway right after this. No matter where you are, it's Texas Standard Time on this 23rd day of April 2026. I'm David Brown. Great to have you with us. As you are no doubt aware, across country, cities and states are being pulled into a sharper new phase of the immigration debate, one marked by funding threats, legal pressure, and demands for greater cooperation with federal enforcement. What began in Washington is now playing out block by block, police department by police department, and now Texas is at the center of it. Yesterday, Houston voted to change its ordinance governing how local officers interact with federal immigration officials after Governor Greg Abbott threatened to withhold more than $100 million in public safety grants. Dallas and Austin have faced similar warnings. It should also be noted that Attorney General Ken Paxton, who's running for the U.S. Senate seat currently held by John Cornyn, has jumped into the fray, too, with his own legal threats against Texas cities. The New York Times yesterday framed Abbott's strategy as echoing Trump-era tactics, using money as leverage, forcing local governments into a public showdown, and making immigration enforcement a kind of test of political loyalty. Supporters of the governor call all this accountability. Critics call it coercion. But the bigger question reaches way beyond Houston. When local policing, state power, and federal immigration priorities collide, who really gets to decide how Texas cities are governed? To help us unpack Houston's move and what it signals for the rest of the state and the country, we're joined now by Dominic Anthony Walsh, City Hall reporter for our partners at Houston Public Media. Dominic, welcome back.
Thanks for having me.
Let's begin with the basics. What exactly did Houston change with this ordinance, and why did this become such a flashpoint in the first place?
Right. So the first major change happened about 2 weeks ago. That's when the city council approved an ordinance that prohibited police officers from detaining people or prolonging traffic stops due to civil immigration or warrants issued by ICE. Prior to that policy, officers were expected to wait up to 30 minutes for ICE to respond when they were notified about these types of warrants. That ordinance, the one that prohibited officers from detaining people, got the governor's attention. He threatened to revoke about $114 million in public safety grants. So the revision yesterday kind of walked back that ordinance a little bit, although, as we'll discuss, it's kind of unclear what exactly this revision yesterday does.
How unusual is it for the governor to use state money directly as leverage against a city government?
This type of, push and pull between the state and the city of Houston has happened before. After Hurricane Harvey, for example, there were billions of dollars in recovery funds for the state. Hurricane Harvey, of course, the brunt was felt in Houston, and yet Houston at first received none of those recovery funds, and the state and Houston would spend years in a tug-of-war kind of wrestling over this funding. So it's not the first time that we've seen Houston and the state government battle over funding.
I mentioned the New York Times had a story yesterday comparing the governor's approach to Trump-style tactics, but I'm thinking in practical terms, what does that mean? Why is that comparison significant?
Well, I think that this moment is notable in Houston because under Mayor John Whitmire, the relationship with the state government in Austin has been warmer. Whitmire spent 5 decades as in the Texas legislature. While he was campaigning, he really emphasized those relationships. The Texas legislature last year appropriated more than $260 million for various programs in the Houston area. Over the past 2 weeks, we've seen really the first kind of rupture in that relationship between Whitmire and Abbott.
Well, Mayor Whitmire argued that the city couldn't afford to lose this money, which was at the center of the threat from the governor, funding for first responders and police. When City Council took this vote yesterday, was the debate shaped as a vote on a policy decision, or was this widely accepted as political surrender under pressure? How was it cast?
There were really two components. The money was a big one, of course. Everyone said that the city needs this money right now. Houston faces a more than $170 million budget deficit with the fiscal year ending in June. The FIFA World Cup matches also kick off in Houston that month, and the city's expecting about $65 million in grants for public safety tied to that sporting events alone. Now, the other piece, though, the city's legal department framed the revision that was passed yesterday as not really changing the ordinance all that much. According to the city attorney, even with this revision, officers will still be expected to not detain people or prolong traffic stops solely due to civil immigration warrants. There is some conflicting perspectives from the police union and even the mayor's office when it comes to whether that's true. But based on the city attorney's representation and the threat of losing so much funding, that's really what drove the 12 council members and the mayor who voted for this revision yesterday.
Dallas and Austin have also been warned. Is it likely that Houston is the first domino here? Other cities expected to fall in line?
Well, from what I've seen, Austin has said that they will fight back. Austin Mayor Kirk Watson, in a statement, said that they're not just going to give in. It's worth noting Austin only has about $2.5 million on the line. Dallas faces the potential loss of more than $30 million directly to the city, along with its portion of a larger FIFA grant. And the Dallas Police Department has said it's reviewing its policies. So Houston was definitely the first to draw the state's attention, and then Dallas and Austin have said different things about what they're going to do next.
Dominic Anthony Walsh covers City Hall for Houston Public Media. Dominic, thanks so much.
Thanks, David.
How can you prove to AI or to other humans that you're a human? You may never have considered that question, but the folks who built AI tools certainly have. I'm Angela Kocherga, and that's the reason for something called World ID, an identity platform that's intended to help people and businesses know who or what they're dealing with online. Our tech expert Omar Gallaga wrote about World ID for CNET, and he's here to explain. Omar, welcome.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Well, let's start with what exactly is World ID?
Well, it is a platform, a protocol, I guess you could call it, in order to verify that people are not only who they say they are, but that they are human. We're sort of being overrun online with all of these AI bots. There's a lot of questions about, is the person we're interacting with online an actual human, or are we dealing with like agentic AI or some other type of machine? So this is a way to verify that, yes, this is a human and it is who they say they are. And this was developed in 2019 by a familiar name, OpenAI's Sam Altman, along with two other entrepreneurs, but it's getting a lot of attention lately because of some new partnerships.
So tell us about that. Who's using it now?
Well, apparently 17 million people have already been verified using this. This has been around since 2019, but it's been kind of under the radar. I mean, certainly not what we associate Sam Altman with. We associate him with ChatGPT and OpenAI. But lately, because of these new partnerships, it's starting to get a lot more attention as a way to verify people, as we are seeing more and more instances of deepfakes and AI bots kind of overrunning websites. So it's getting a lot of attention all of a sudden. That's why we wrote about it.
Well, talk a little bit more about that, the need. Why do we need this World ID?
Because it's getting harder and harder to tell who's real online in interactions, whether it's through chat or whether it's even in meetings. One of the partnerships that World ID has announced is with Zoom. So you will soon be able to have tools to tell whether someone who has popped into a video call is an actual human, which could be useful if you're dealing with bots popping into conference calls. Also Tinder. Match Group, which is based out of Texas, is using this for Tinder as a way for people to verify their online profiles, make sure that you're talking to an actual person, not a AI catfisher. And also, they're developing tools for concerts in order to tamp down on these AI bots that snap up tickets for events.
Fascinating. Well, tell us about World ID's product, the Orb.
Yeah, now this is where it gets interesting. It's not just like scanning your face with a webcam. There's actually a physical device called an orb that is about the size of a soccer ball. If you've ever played the game Portal, it's got kind of GLaDOS vibes. It's this electronic ball that identifies your identity, and it has, I guess, high-resolution scanning to make sure that the person being scanned is who they say they are, and it verifies the identity and then kind of matches that to your phone. So your phone would sort of hold that verification identity. The device that you carry around would hold that, but the orb is what would actually verify by scanning your face and verifying that, yes, this is an actual person. There's pre-orders for these orbs, so organizations can actually buy them and have them for this. But I'm looking at their map, and there's only 2 orb verification locations in Texas. One is in Austin, one is in Grapevine.
Well, so then the question is verifying your humanity, or that the person you're talking to is a human, a big issue right now, or is World ID playing a long game here?
Probably a long game, but thinking that this is going to be an ongoing issue and something that people are going to want some verifiable proof that they are who they say they are. But we're starting to see verification happening across a lot of different platforms and websites, mostly due to age, trying to keep kids safe online. So we're seeing age verification on platforms like Roblox. Discord has tried to do this. So I think there's 2 things going on. One is the age verification issue, and one is just the overall, are you an AI or are you a human issue?
What else are you keeping an eye on? This sounds like it's so new.
I think whether it's people are going to actually adopt it, because it seems like kind of a hassle to actually have to go to a location and have this device scan your face. And I think also there's hesitation around that. Like, do I really want to give my facial scan to Sam Altman and his crew? Sam Altman has been in the news lately, and not in a good way, with some issues about his reputation and his dealings at OpenAI. So it's like, is this the person in the group that you want to verify and trust your future identity to? I don't know. I think there will be some hesitations there.
Omar Gallaga is a verified human who writes about tech for CNET, and he joins us here each week. Omar, thank you so much.
I swear I'm a real person. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
For the past year, Andy Uhler of the University of Texas Energy Institute has been crisscrossing Texas, tracking the jagged transformation to renewable energy. Well, with a huge increase in demand for electricity projected, how much will cleaner electricity be a part of the mix? Today, a look at one of the key obstacles, politics, and how that's playing out as the Standard continues.
Support for Texas Standard comes from the beef-loving Texans at the Texas Beef Council, a community passionate about what they eat, where it comes from, and how it's prepared. Recipes and meal ideas at beeflovingtexans.com. Support for Texas Standard comes from HEB and the My HEB app, which is available for download, and shopping fresh departments like seafood, produce, bakery, and deli, and scheduling curbside pickup or home delivery. More at HEB.com.
It's the Texas Standard. I'm David Brown. While Austin often holds itself out as different from most Texas cities, it is different from much of the rest of the state in this respect. Residents don't generally hit the open market to buy their electricity. They tend to get it from the city's own electric company. But Austin Energy doesn't generate much of its own power. Most of it comes from somewhere else. Wind farms in West Texas, solar fields in the Panhandle, gas plants along the Gulf Coast and beyond. And this hints at why the biggest fights over Texas energy don't happen at the wellhead or the turbine. They happen under the pink dome at the Capitol. In other words, we're talking politics. For Phases and Stages, a podcast from the University of Texas at Austin Energy Institute, Andy Uhler tells us what this reveals about the future of energy in Texas.
On a clear day, you can almost make out the state capitol from the University of Texas Law School, which sits on a hill just north of downtown Austin. Professor David Spence's office doesn't really have a line of sight to the granite dome on Congress Avenue, but that doesn't mean he thinks any less about the politics of an energy industry in transition.
When political scientists think about and write about opposition to renewable energy and energy transition generally, they're of two minds. There's a group that thinks it's all about economics and economic self-interest, and there's another group of people who are focusing on partisan polarization and the fact that the two parties are growing apart on renewable energy.
So which is it in Texas?
Phases and stages, circles and cycles, and scenes that we've all seen before. Let me tell you some more.
Spence wrote a book called Climate of Contempt that argues that bitter partisanship is the main impediment to a net zero future.
And this second group thinks that this is more about partisan identity. And right now, being a Republican means following the president, and the president doesn't like renewable energy. And so it's an expression of your partisan identity to oppose renewable energy in your community.
Spence says some of that attitude is dictated by how you consume information and how much time you spend on social media. It also varies by location. Now, I've seen that in my travels, too. The folks I spoke with in Lubbock, a predominantly conservative and Republican voting part of Texas, told me that people out on the plains are practical before they're political. Caitlin Smith says that's what she's noticed, too, in her role as a senior vice president of federal and regulatory affairs at Jupiter Power. They're a company that's developed huge batteries to store electricity for later use on the grid.
In Texas, I think very little so far have we seen people be opposed to a project because of politics.
She says the public concerns about their projects in West Texas are more in line with that first group David Spence was talking about, that thinks practicality first, politics second. As Smith sees it, the onus is on companies like hers to make sure the community feels like it's getting what it deserves. That's where people like State Representative Drew Darby come in. He represents District 72, which includes a big swath of West Texas and cities like San Angelo and Big Spring. He says when lawmakers are in Austin every couple of years for the legislative session, they need to make sure that rural Texans have a say in what energy infrastructure is developed in their backyards.
We need to recognize that there are sacrifices that people in rural Texas have to make in order to provide those goods and services to people who want to live in cities.
Cleaner, renewable, sustainable. Surely that tips the scales for politicians like Darby, right? Think again. He says from his perspective, he doesn't really differentiate between oil and gas and wind and solar, which makes sense. There's a lot of all of those happening in his district. He says Texas has a complex energy need.
And it requires a complex public policy in order to utilize all those aspects of energy generation. I say I'm kind of a all the above guy. I think we need it all.
As Darby sees it, resistance to renewables in rural West Texas comes down to familiarity.
Everybody that's alive today has existed in a world dominated by oil and gas and agriculture in my part of the world. And so the public and people that live in the Permian Basin or near the Permian Basin understand the technology, understand the dynamics of it, understand the impact of it, understand the benefits of it. With solar farms and other renewable forms, there is uncertainty in some aspects. They don't understand currently some of the conditions that you live around these projects. Are there concerns that people have? Is there noise associated with it?
In other words, a lot of rural Texans wonder if they're even asking the right questions as they're being asked to sign on the dotted line. Consider this transaction, one that's increasingly frequent in West Texas. A company wants to lease your land, or at least part of it, to put up transmission lines. Those are the wires needed to send the electricity to where it'll be consumed. A far-off place like, I don't know, Austin. Lisa Martin is Chief Operating Officer for Austin Energy, a power company owned and operated by the city.
One of the main parts of our portfolio that is carbon-free is solar and wind farms that are, far away from the core of Austin. And so we rely on transmission to bring that power. And over the recent years, we've seen extreme congestion in areas that we can't always control. And so we are looking forward to a lot of the transmission build-outs across Texas. We think that'll help the electrons flow in different ways.
And on top of that, Martin says upgrades and build-outs to Austin's own transmission infrastructure, along with more battery storage, should help ease that congestion. Because she says they've heard from their constituents in Austin, the company's customers, and as a result, Austin Energy is committed to supporting carbon-free wind and solar in order to wean off of coal and natural gas as soon as possible.
We are community-driven, and so what the community values is very important to how we make our next decisions and what we do going forward.
Case in point, Austin Energy has developed a plan to be 100% carbon-free by 2035.
And that's a pretty big target. It gets harder as you get closer and closer to the end. And so we're at about 65% right now. And with the load growth that you're talking about, we're hitting a lot of challenges.
Because the thing about energy production and consumption is that it doesn't operate in a closed loop. And that's the thing, right? It's hard to plan around a moving target. Just last week, ERCOT, the organization responsible for managing the state's power grid, forecast Texas's energy demands could quadruple by 2032. And even ERCOT itself has given that forecast a caveat. We don't truly know just how much our energy needs are going to rise. What we do know, the shift to renewable energy sources comes at a time of unprecedented electricity demand. As Willie himself might put it, it's a transition rolling out in phases and stages, changing the physical landscape and features of Texas. Definitely not scenes that any of us have seen here before. And these days, it's moving faster than anyone would have dared to imagine just a few short years ago. In Austin, I'm Andy Uhler for the Texas Standard.
Support for Texas Standard comes from Texas CASA. For a child in foster care, small moments today can have a big impact tomorrow. More on how lending time and support can help make a difference at becomeacasa.org. Support for Texas Standard comes from Texas Monthly Presents The Story, a docuseries about the state of Texas. Stories about our culture and what's at stake, from the perspective of the magazine's writers. Airing weekends on local PBS stations and streaming on the PBS website and app.
From the Texas Newsroom, I'm Tom Perumian. Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton is launching an investigation into major music streaming platforms, including Spotify and Apple Music. Paxton alleges the platforms are engaging in payola schemes, accepting bribes to promote songs, artists, or content. Paxton is examining whether the streaming services have entered into undisclosed financial arrangements with record labels, promoters, or third parties. A water crisis continues to deepen in Texas's 8th largest city and a major industrial hub. KEDT's Emily Salazar has the details.
Speaking in Washington, D.C. last week, South Texas Congressman Michael Cloud laid out the situation in Corpus Christi for U.S. Energy Secretary and fellow lawmakers.
We do have a situation right now in Corpus where all the energy that's produced there and a lot of the refining that's being done, we're running out of water.
Corpus Christi leaders said that they plan to implement unprecedented water restrictions in September because of ongoing drought conditions. But they struggled to articulate what life would look like under the restrictions and whether such ambitious conservation targets are even possible. That's because more than half the city's daily water consumption comes from the multi-billion-dollar chemical plants, refineries, and other industrial facilities operated by some of the biggest companies in the world. And those companies, like ExxonMobil, Valero, and Occidental, have not said how they plan to dramatically cut water use. I'm Emily Salazar in Corpus Christi.
A new plan by U.S. Customs and Border Protection now includes so-called patrol roads for much of Big Bend National Park and neighboring Big Bend Ranch State Park. This comes after a bipartisan coalition pushed back against a border wall. CBP hasn't commented on the change. The threat of the New World screwworm is nearing the Texas border with Mexico. Texas Public Radio's Norma Martinez has more.
Texas Agriculture Commissioner Sid Miller said last week that a recent case of New World screwworm was detected about 90 miles from the border in the Mexican state of Nuevo León. Miller said this week that a new case, also in Nuevo León, was reported 60 miles from the border. The flesh-eating screwworm fly larvae poses a grave threat to the livestock industry. State officials broke ground last week on a sterile fly facility in Edinburgh to combat the screwworm in South Texas. I'm Norma Martinez in San Antonio.
And I'm Tom Perumian from the Texas Newsroom.
Support for these Texas headlines comes from Texas Monthly Presents The Story, a docuseries about the state of Texas, our culture, and what's at stake from the perspective of the magazine's writers. Weekends on local PBS stations and streaming on the PBS website and app.
33 minutes past the hour, Texas Standard Time. I'm David Brown. Like other outdoor sports, archery's been booming across Texas in recent years, and here's another sign of how serious it's gotten. Nearly 200 young, talented bow slingers from Austin are in Salt Lake City today for a national tournament, competing on one of the sport's biggest stages for young archers. KUT's Nathan Bernier visited an Austin elementary school gym where the sport is teaching kids how to focus and turning some of them into champions.
Inside the gym at Highland Park Elementary School, a line of a couple dozen kids raises their bows, draws, and lets arrows fly. The arrows smack into the center of targets downrange. The kids make it look easy, but they've been working at it for a long time. 10-year-old Etta Moskowitz won a state title in March.
This is my first year doing archery.
First year and you won state championship?
Yeah.
How'd you do that?
Lots of practice and, teammates help also.
Her 11-year-old teammate Louis Garcia also won a state title last month in bullseye. He says practice matters, but so does mindset.
Don't get in your head. That's the biggest thing. Stay calm. There's this quote, just be a goldfish. Just don't worry about it. It's just one arrow at a time, one step at a time, basically like that.
Together, they're part of one of the most successful youth archery programs in Texas. And relax. Austin ISD does not pay for the archery program. Families mostly cover the cost, which can run about $1,000 a year for each kid, including equipment. Some scholarships are available. For now, though, it means the program only exists at a handful of campuses. But the sport has been growing in Austin since the program started about a decade ago at Highland Park Elementary. That's when a longtime PE teacher named Jim DeLine let his students try archery as a 2-week class unit.
Instantly found that it was a game changer for a lot of kids in a lot of different ways. Kids that are kind of on the peripheral of team sports or don't get a lot of social interaction with other people or, might be on the spectrum a little bit, right? Instantly saw the change in how this impacted them.
So they started a club. And in 2018, the archers at Highland Park Elementary won state championships. They haven't lost since.
And relax, Mario. Keep that bow up a little bit. This guy right here is one of the hardest working. You should really interview him. Hey, Robbie.
11-year-old Robbie Schooler walked over and told me about his daily routine.
I have a whiteboard and I made a chart of all the exercises I do. I do it almost every day. And I keep a journal just to write down all my thoughts about archery.
He says that's how he trains his mind.
If you want to get really good, you have to set small goals or have a routine that you do every day. If you don't do it, it doesn't feel that good. So it kind of makes the mindset you want to do it every single day.
Why do you like archery so much?
When you see all the middle school archers, high school archers getting these perfect 50s and stuff, you're I want to work hard to get that, even if it's going to take a lot of work.
Have you done that? Have you got a perfect 50?
Yeah, too, yeah.
If you're not nervous, you're not what?
Normal!
And it's okay to be nervous as long as you don't barf and throw up, right? We'll let the other teams barf and throw up, but we're not going to. Got it?
DeLine has watched his first archery students grow up. Some of them are in college now. When seniors graduate from high school, they'll sometimes come back to Highland Park for one last team picture.
So cool. I'm the smallest one in the bunch. And again, getting back to your original question, what keeps you in this? All coaches will tell you the same thing, relationships. You're making lifetime friends and, it's what keeps you there.
Just as I'm about to leave, the students start applauding for some reason.
Huddle, huddle. Bobby got a 50?
Yeah. Robbie got another perfect score, all 5 arrows in the 10-point center ring.
So is that 3 this year or 3 total? Or?
3 this year.
Wow, congrats.
When you get a 50 here, right, what happens is you get a sticker and then we get to feed you to the llamas, so.
Well, now Robbie and his teammates are taking their focus to Salt Lake City, where they're competing in a national tournament that wraps up on Saturday. I'm Nathan Bernier in Austin.
The NBA playoffs are underway with the San Antonio Spurs and Houston Rockets in the running for the national title, but the biggest story right now in the middle of round one just might be the health of the Spurs' Victor Wembanyama. The 2025-2026 Defensive Player of the Year is in concussion protocol right now after a scary fall in Game 2 of San Antonio's playoff series with the Portland Trail Blazers. He's listed as questionable for Friday's Game 3. The teams are currently tied at 1 win apiece. For the Rockets, well, they lost their first 2 games in their series with the LA Lakers. Those 2 teams play Game 3 in Space City on Friday. And in the WNBA, well, the Dallas Wings training camp kicked off this week, led by new head coach Jose Fernandez. For the second year in a row, the Wings had the first pick in the draft, this year selecting UConn's A.Z. Fudd. That reunited her with her former teammate and last year's number 1 pick, Paige Beckers. The Wings' first preseason game, April 30th on the road against the Indiana Fever.
Support for Texas Standard comes from Half Price Books, a Texas-bred new and used bookstore, proudly supporting public media and sustainability by keeping books, music, and other media in circulation. Store locations and more information at hpb.com.
It's the Texas Standard. I'm Laura Rice. Long gone are Anne Hathaway's bushy teenage eyebrows and tiny tiara of her Princess Diary days. Today, she wears a crown of a different sort in the new film Mother Mary. Hathaway is one part of the film of 2 halves. The other part is Michaela Cole. Mother Mary is epic and arena-filling and yet a simple story. It's beautiful and terrifying, sensual but not overtly so. It's the kind of story David Lowery wants to tell. He's a writer and director also known for The Green Knight and A Ghost Story. David, thank you so much for stopping by the Texas Standard Studios.
Pleasure to be here.
I have so many questions about this film. It begs the audience to fill in the blanks. But before we get to that, I want to ask a little bit about you. You came in wearing this pink Dallas hat. You grew up in the Dallas area.
Yeah, I flew in from Dallas this morning and needed a hat to protect myself from the Texas sunshine, so just grabbed this one from the airport. But it's pretty representative of me.
Yeah? How so? How did North Texas shape you?
I always think of North Texas as being somewhat like a fairy tale, although that's really only in the winter when everything feels a little bit grimmer and darker and grayer and icier. I am originally from Wisconsin, and so cold weather is in my veins, but the weird combination of the Texas landscape in the winter really kind of calcified in my bones and became part of my personality. And so I think every film I make feels like a fairy tale, and most of them are fairy tales that could only take place in Texas.
This is interesting because you've done a lot of films that have taken you all over the world. Mother Mary is in Germany. Pete's Dragon was in New Zealand. A Ghost Story was in North Texas.
Yeah.
But do you see yourself coming back to Texas to tell a Texas story, or do you feel like you're just taking Texas everywhere you go?
I definitely take Texas everywhere I go, and I'm sure at some point, maybe in the near future, I'll have a story that's specifically Texan to tell again. But it's always going to be a part of me no matter what.
You know, you described it as a fairy tale. I think the words I was thinking of were almost. It's definitely supernatural, right? I mean, is it?
This one's hard to put in a box.
Yeah.
It's several boxes that you kind of nest within each other.
Yeah. I hate to try to pin an artist down ever, but do you see that as a theme, something that people can find from film to film?
Definitely. Like, all of my films have a sense of, I don't want to say supernatural, but I would almost say spirituality to them. And they're not to say they're religious, but there's a sense of something beyond the rational world. Even a film like The Old Man, the Gun, about a bank robber, or Ain't the Mighty Saints, which is also about bank robbers. There's something that's just slightly surreal about all of them that keeps them, they're not completely tethered to reality.
There is something that it does border on religious, I do think, in Mother Mary. Certainly
Definitely.
The title, right?
This
the name.
This one, all my Catholic upbringing is rising to the surface in a big way in this one.
Yeah, but it doesn't necessarily, it's not explained or explored all the way. Is that how you want audiences to interact with this movie, to have questions, to bring their own ideas to what's happening?
I think so. I think that the film is very understandable on an emotional level, and sometimes emotions are hard to put into words. So I think audiences will feel the truth within the story very acutely, but they might not be able to explain exactly why it feels so familiar. And I find that creativity, the movie's about a creative partnership. It's about the act of creation in so many ways, and creativity is one of those things that everyone understands, but no one knows how to talk about. This is a movie that is full of dialogue. It's about characters trying to explain things to one another, but the thing that they can't quite get across is something that can't be put into words. And that's where the supernatural elements start to creep in around the edges, because they're trying to describe something that's indescribable.
Well, I want to talk about your two halves and your casting. Because we look at these actresses a lot. Can you tell me about why these were the right faces for your film?
That's a great question. I was at the airport walking through the duty-free section, and there's Anne Hathaway in Bulgaria. She's in a makeup, like she's got all these brands in duty-free, and I'm seeing her all around me. And that was something that I wanted audiences to be able to carry into the film with them when they meet Mother Mary. I want them to have a sense of her as a celebrity, as someone who has been in the public eye for decades. And when you cast an actor, you can either, run away from who they actually are, or you can utilize that. And with Anne, I knew that there's generations of audiences that have grown up with her at this point, and that was going to benefit our understanding of who Mother Mary is. Beyond that, I wanted someone who could hold their own in a two-hander for 2 hours, which she absolutely can. And so can Michaela Cole, who I think is one of the most gifted writers, performers, directors. She is just a legend in the 10 years that I've been aware of her as an artist. And she is like a force of nature. She really is. And you see that in the film.
This film is beautiful. I mean, it has lights and colors and textures. I think textures
I'm
are
obsessed with texture.
Yes,
Yeah,
it really comes out in this film. I wonder, in this day where we spend a lot of time on small screens, does this feel like a very big screen movie to you?
We went out of our way to make it feel like a big screen movie, not just with the pop concert sequences, but even in the scenes where the characters are in this one location speaking at great length to one another. We wanted it to feel cinematic. We wanted every image to be rich, to be textured, to feel like you could reach out and touch it. The fashion aspect of it plays into that as well. This is a movie about the feel of fabric on skin, about creating a dress that you understand what it must feel like to wear that dress. And so all of those things contribute to mise-en-scène that was really important for us to not forget about when we're on page 8 of a dialogue scene where you have to remember this is a movie that is meant to be seen on a huge screen with as many people coming together as possible to watch it.
Well, speaking of not being able to pin it down, I think I used the word sensual in the introduction. I read someone else said psychosexual.
I'm trying to figure out what that means
right?
exactly.
Well, you did see that too. And, But the thing is there's nothing sexual about the movie, really. I mean, exactly. But what is that we're getting? And it's just the closeness of the camera.
It's the intimacy.
Yeah.
It's a very intimate movie about people who have a very close relationship, and their relationship is a creative one. A creative partnership can be just as passionate and intense and sensual, although not in the traditional ways, as a romantic relationship. And it was really important to me that the film represents that, and that it has that sense of connection between the characters that goes beyond just the physical touch. It's really interesting. They don't touch one another for most of the movie. At a very key point, they do make physical contact, and it registers. It's something that for almost 90 minutes we've been seeing them at arm's length, and all of a sudden they're close together, and it's a very quotidian moment. There's nothing truly special about it, but just seeing that touch and knowing what it's for and what it represents after everything we've been through up to that point, it's a really shattering moment. It's my attempt to capture the creative process on film. I really was trying to distill what it's like to work with someone to make something. And pop music became sort of the perfect metaphor for that. Also, I just really love Taylor Swift and wanted to make a movie that sort of captured the feeling that I get when I listen to Reputation. But the idea of that sort of symbiotic, dialectical, alchemical process that leads to the creation of work of art, that's what I was trying to tap into.
David Lowery is a writer and director. He spent his formative years in North Texas, and his new film is Mother Mary, in theaters April 17th. David, thank you again.
Thank you so much.
Hey, what's cooking? Make sure to join us as we check in with Texas's top taco journalists to hear about the latest innovation stories and the people behind many a Texan's favorite go-to. It's Mondo Rayo with the Tacos of Texas, next Thursday on the Texas Standard.
Support for Tacos of Texas comes from HEB.
It's the Texas Standard. I'm David Brown. In the center of the main thoroughfare on Galveston Island, less than a mile away from the city's historic pleasure pier, there's a monument to Texas heroes. It's a 72-foot-tall granite column topped by the Lady of Victory, a 22-foot bronze statue pointing north to the San Jacinto battlefield. But recently, an open question has been swirling around this well-known symbol of civic and state pride, specifically this question: whose monument is it? No, literally, who does this monument belong to? Will the owner of this monument please step forward? Here to tell us more, Chris Gray, who reports for Cron.com, powered by the Houston Chronicle. Chris, welcome back.
Hi, David. Good to be with you again.
Good to have you. Hey, we see monuments every day across Texas. Very similar to this. I guess I would assume that one sitting in the middle of a major thoroughfare belongs to the city, no?
Well, you would think that, but actually, when the monument was dedicated back in April of 1900, it was dedicated to the state, and technically it sits on Texas Highway 87, which is another name for Broadway, Galveston's main thoroughfare. So that ambiguity has really been there since the beginning.
Very interesting. So if it's on a state road, and again, I'm just thinking, what would I naturally think? If it's on a state road, probably state property, therefore the state owns it?
I don't think a lot of folks necessarily think of Broadway as a state road, which I think is part of the problem here. Yes, it's a state road, but it's also the city's main thoroughfare.
Yeah. Okay, so this monument goes up in 1900. Was there any sort of deed for the land that it sits on? Can you sort of track this through property records and say, hey, the state owns this property, therefore, I guess the state would have to maintain the monument? Is that how these questions started coming up? Who maintains it?
Well, the Galveston Historical Foundation has dug into this, and, from Henry Rosenberg onward, a prominent Galveston philanthropist who actually left the money to erect this monument in his will. He died in 1893. Mm-hmm. From that point forward, it's always been, to my understanding, fairly clear that this monument belongs to the state. However, after the governor dedicated the monument, there was no corresponding agency or office where it was earmarked to take care of it. So flash forward to the mid-1980s, folks started noticing that the statue was looking kind of weathered and needed some work.
Yeah.
At which point the Texas legislature got involved to create a commission spearheaded on the island by a county judge named Ray Holbrook. Mm-hmm. They actually raised about $250,000 to restore the statue, and then Ann Richards came along a few years later and rededicated it once the restoration was finished. And once again, things just kind of got quiet on that front until 2015, when Galveston City Council said, okay, if the state doesn't want anything to do with this, we're going to step in and raise some money to get some work done on it.
Let me just be clear, because did the state at some point walk away from it? I mean, after it was rededicated with Ann Richards there and they had cleaned up the statue, did they just walk away and say, Galveston, it's yours. From here on out, take care of it?
Well, maybe de facto they did, but technically it still belongs to the state. But according to the Galveston Historical Foundation, the Historical Commission seems to be under the impression that the statue belongs to the city.
Oh, is the city claiming it? Does it want ownership of the statue?
I think the city wouldn't mind ownership. I think the city takes a lot of pride in the monument being there, certainly. Mm-hmm. It's just, when it comes time to pony up some money to get it restored and fight some of the climate effects that Galveston's salty air can have on a monument like this, I think it just it
not
just
so much fun being holding the bag there, being the one holding the bag for cleanup.
Right.
So right now, how contentious is the question of who owns the statue? Does the state acknowledge it technically belongs to us, or is the city trying to wrest control of it from the state, or where do we stand?
I think the city is at least short-term committed to it, to looking after it. They are issuing a request for proposals for another round of restoration. But I think in the long term, they would like to have this question decided one way or the other. From what I understand, that would actually take an act of the legislature, a resolution or something spelling out, okay, this monument belongs either to the city of Galveston or to the state of Texas.
I wonder how common this is, because there are monuments all across Texas in small towns, larger towns too. And once the celebrations are over and the monument has been dedicated, I wonder how common an issue this is.
That is an excellent question. Certainly, I've never heard of a similar situation like this anywhere else across Texas. I do think that organizations like the Daughters of the Republic of Texas, they have a lot to do with upkeep of a lot of monuments, I think, including this one. But their budget can only go so far. So when you're talking about a big piece of art like this, you need serious money to properly take care of it.
Well, it'll be interesting to see where this winds up ultimately. It doesn't sound like there's a conclusive answer to who's going to take care of this statue. A developing story, you might say, from Chris Gray, who reports for Cron.com. We're going to link to his full story so you can check it out in detail over at texasstandard.org. Chris, thanks so much, and keep us posted.
All right, I sure will. Thank you so much for having me on.
Hey, listen, as we were going to air today, some breaking news from Washington. The Trump administration's ordered an historic reclassification of state-licensed medical marijuana under federal law. The Associated Press reporting that the U.S. Attorney General signed an order this morning moving licensed medical cannabis from Schedule 1, that's the same category as heroin and LSD, to Schedule 3, that's a less restrictive class that recognizes accepted medical use. Now, it should be noted this does not federally legalize cannabis for recreational use, and marijuana outside of state medical programs would remain a Schedule 1 drug, but it could significantly expand medical research, ease some regulatory barriers, allow licensed medical marijuana businesses to deduct expenses on their federal taxes, that sort of thing. In Texas, the implications not yet clear. We already allow limited medical cannabis. Lawmakers have debated whether to broaden access, that sort of thing. Federal shift like this could add momentum to those debates, make research partnerships and medical access easier to pursue, that sort of thing. It's a story we continue to track here on The Standard. Hope you can join us tomorrow.
Support for Texas Standard comes from Texas Mutual Insurance Company, a workers' compensation provider that's been caring for hardworking Texans for over 30 years. More at texasmutual.com/expert partner. Philanthropic support for Texas Standard comes from Casey and Scott O'Hare, the Winkler Family Foundation, Lynn Dobson and Greg Waldridge, Adrian Killam, the George Huntington Family, and the Cynthia and George Mitchell Foundation.